Today's session, I'm going to do splits. I'm going to do front splits and handstands. So I'm going to work the mobility, active and passive versions of the splits. And then with that, I'm going to do handstands. So holding the handstand in a split position. I'm going to show versions against the wall. And then as I warm up, I'm going to show harder and harder progressions and going all the way up to a one arm in a split position. So follow along at your level. I've already done a warm-up. I've done a opening of the thoracic over a yoga block, but you could use a foam roller. I've done a quad hip flexor stretch, a hamstring stretch, and then a little bit of hip glute opening. So the next thing is just to test where we are with our front splits. So I'm going to do a passive position on both sides, and then I'm going to go into a handstand. I'm first just going to use the wall and slowly move the hands further away from the wall, which demands more and more flexibility to go in that split position. So what I'm focusing on here is trying to keep the hips facing forward, so I don't want to twist the hip out in any way, but I'm just going to see how low I can go. So I'm just going to use a little cushion underneath the hamstring just to raise this hip up a little bit. So that's my restriction here on this right hip flexor, the back hip, to stop me from getting my torso upright. So that's how we look with the left foot forwards. So very similar on this side, this hip flexor is stopping me. And my body wants to twist that way, so it's pretty hard to keep the hips facing forwards. Now if you're not so flexible there, just go into this position. So lock out that front hamstring and slide as far forwards as you can, keeping the hip facing forward. So it might be there. Just watch what's happening to this back foot. We don't want it to twist around. So my hips are facing over there. Now for handstands, I'm going to start with the wall version. I'd recommend you all do this so it gives you a real good measuring point or indicator of your flexibility. I'm going to start with my hand closer to the wall, and I'm going to try and get an equal split with the legs and slowly move the hands further and further away from the wall until I feel like I'm at my max. Now ideally at my max, I want to have both feet or both legs at the same angle. So slowly increase the distance from the wall. Now if you're newer to handstands, you might find that your limit is your confidence away from the wall as opposed to your flexibility. But just explore, see how far you can get away from the wall. Once you've done your dominant leg, have a go at your non-dominant leg. So the tricky bit there is to try and feel where the hands, shoulder and hip are stacked on top of each other, because as you get further away from the wall, it tips your hip and forces you to go closer to the wall. Now, a lot of people with this will either close the hip or arch through the low back too much. So just watch that. It's good to watch the video back once you've done it so you can actually see what you're doing, not just what you think you're doing. So similar thing now, we're just going to see where our flexibility is at with the splits, but I'm going to go into an active position. So I'm going to lift up from the heel of my foot to the ball of my foot. Now you might find if you don't have this, you have to go from the knee to the heel, or you'll just be much higher up, and you might need to hold on to some sticks or a box or something with your hands to keep the torso upright. So the goal here is to go the widest split you can, but to be able to hold. But let's hold for about 10 to 15 seconds on each side. So the hardest bit there for me was stopping the calf from hitting the floor, just because my hamstring is much longer than my hip flexor. So now with the handstands, I'm going to try and split. So I'm going to swap legs. So go to my max distance, slowly swap legs, side to side. Now I'm going to do this freestanding. You can do it against the wall, so I'll show that option. Now again, this is going to be dependent on your ability, not just your flexibility. Now if you're not so strong in the freestanding handstand, you're probably going to have to move a little bit closer to the wall, just because you won't have the control for the amount of time it will take to swap legs, if you're flexible especially, but not so good on the hands. Now this set for the splits, I'm going to do some sliding. Now you can do this from the knee, which is a little bit easier, or you can do it from the standing position, which is harder. Now I'm using a carpet slider, furniture slider. You could use a piece of cardboard, you could just use socks on a slippery mat or on a wooden floor. If you're not ready for this one is quite aggressive, and especially the change of direction if you want to try and come back up again. I can't come back up to a standing position, but I can slide down from a standing position. If you find that's too aggressive, or if you're not ready for it, just stick with one of the other two that we've done so far, so the passive hold or that active hold, increasing the time to like 30 to 60 seconds per side. Now that wasn't the best for sliding on that concrete for some reason. I think I just had too much weight in the slider. Okay, so that's the sliding one for the splits. Now we're going to go back into the handstand again. Now I'm going to keep progressing the handstand, so I'm going to go into a hold in that split position, and I'm going to start to flag over to go towards one arms. Now if you're not ready for this, what you can do is start to work on the other one we just done, so that split one. But to make it a little bit harder, you could try and come together slowly, holding your freestanding handstand in the best possible position you can, and then open into the straddle, the split in the opposite foot, and then back again, hold, and then split again, and keep going between the two. And you can change the speed of that. If you're working on the wall, you can change the distance, so you can play around with those variations. So like I said, I'm going to go to lock in my split position, and then I'm going to just try and go towards a one arm. So I'm either going to go up onto fingertip or just float for a few seconds in a one arm on both sides, and then come back to straight. So my right one arm was there as per usual. Left one's going to need a little bit more warming up to start to get some holds there. So I'm going to continue this workout now. I'm going to stop the video in now, but I'm going to try and get some good holds on my right and on my left side in that one arm. I might even progress on the right side especially to try and do some leg changes in the one arm. And then I'm just going to rest in different split positions in between. I'm probably going to aim for around 5 to 10 sets, and I recommend you do the same. Normal deal, stick any questions or comments down below or send me a message. Thumbs up and subscribe would be appreciated, and I'll speak to you next time. Thanks guys.